Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining us here on the ESM podcast, Everything Service Management, with myself, Daniel Gilby, and my colleague and co-host, Sunil Duggal. Sunil, great to have you with us.
Hi, Dan. Good to
Folks,
be here
you'll
again.
notice, yeah, lovely to see you again. It's been a while. What has it been, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Folks, you'll notice we don't have a guest speaker with us today. This is going to be a Sunil and Dan show. And just before we get into the meat of things, we're going to be talking about ServiceNow World Forum, but just wanted to highlight to all of you listeners out there some of our upcoming podcasts. Coming soon, coming down the pipeline, we're going to be talking with the folks over at Alemba. Very keen to see what they have to say about all things service management and how they see the market space. Sunil, I know you've got one of your previous colleagues, Simon Piriton, coming on. Anything to say about that, just very quickly for the listeners?
I do. So just before I talk about Simon, though, on Alemba, so they're obviously not an official partner of Accession. We don't actually work with their technology, but the reason we thought that would be of interest to our listeners is because Alemba have quite a lot of success in the healthcare space, the NHS particularly, and what we wanted to do was get them on to talk about that specific industry and some of the challenges that they see in that space from their customer organization. So I thought that would be really interesting. And Simon Piriton, as you said, is an old colleague of mine. Simon has spent 25 years helping people move into the IT industry in a range of different sectors. So infrastructure and support, in development, in web, when way back in the day, the web was really the big thing. And what we thought would be really interesting about having Simon on the show was that he can tell us, what are the kind of skills that young people need to be thinking about if they want to move into a career
into the IT space. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and how that's changed, and how he thinks that's going to change, because, we're in this, as we're going to spend a lot of today talking about in this world of generative AI. Well, what does that do for young people? How does it help them, and also how will it hinder them moving into this?
It's going to be super useful for people wanting to break into the IT space. And then lastly, but not leastly, again, in the run-up of things coming, we're going to be talking with Guy Kramer, who's a cybersecurity expert. I'm very keen to hear his views on how cybersecurity, and that's very prevalent nowadays, everybody's got to take note. Things like DORA are coming into effect for financial and similar organizations. We'll be speaking with him to share his views and understand a little bit more about that crossover with service management and cyber, and how those things all interoperate and work together.
Fantastic. And we're also working on, just whilst we're on this train of thought, we're also working on some more customer guests as well, because I think two of the most popular podcasts that we've done, Dan, have been the ones with Hannah Katagina from Luminor, who talked about the
risk and compliance.
Yep, exactly. And also Stuart Salman Otet from Transfutech, who talks about their journey in terms of buying a new service management solution. So we're working very hard on asking our customers to come and join us too.
And just lastly, for the listeners out there, if this is something you perhaps like to get involved with, have some ideas, or definitely there's topics you'd like to hear us cover, then please do get in touch. Okay, enough of the preamble, fair to say. So Sunil, you were very lucky enough last week to get tickets or get a registration going to the ServiceNow World Forum. I, on the other hand, failed miserably at that task, so I'm going to get in early next year for sure. What was it like? Was it busy? How many people were there?
Well, so firstly, Dan, commiserations, but next year for sure. Yeah, it was busy. I have heard somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 attendees. Now that will be a combination of ServiceNow folk, I guess. They're probably in the count. Partners, some of whom had stands and were sponsoring the event, some of whom, like Accession, were not. And then obviously a large, substantial contingent of customers. But I think, to put this into some kind of context, and, this is a kind of guesstimate, really, but I would say that it's as big as maybe SITS. The The event was in the Excel Centre in London, so obviously a huge space.
Yeah.
And they had down one end of the Excel Centre, they had a big expo hall, and then they also had a keynote theatre, which was enormous, right? And then a whole range of breakout rooms as well, and lots of different sessions all on in parallel during the day. The ones I went to were really well attended. The keynote was packed, but all of the breakout sessions were very well attended. I tried to listen to a couple of sessions in the main expo hall with the kind of, headphones.
Silent disco type thing, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a couple of them, I couldn't get headphones, right? So I obviously got there too late, and they'd all been taken. So yeah, I mean, there are many people with lots of different views on ServiceNow in the marketplace, but certainly there was lots of interest. There was a buzz, and it gives you a kind of feel for the mind share, I think, that ServiceNow has captured amongst the broader sort of service management community and those outside as well, in HR, in customer service and the other areas that the ServiceNow portfolio touches. And then the last thing I'd just say in terms of the actual event, itself and the organization, they've got some great people in the ServiceNow marketing team.
Those guys know what they're doing, don't they?
Yeah, they put on a great show. It was very slick. The only thing I'm going to pick up on, right, it's such a minor point, but they started serving lunch at 11 a.m. and it was gone by, about 12:15. So, if you didn't get in early, you were hungry.
So just a note for the listeners then, if you attend next year, take a packed lunch maybe.
Yeah, or get in early. I mean, I don't.
Or get in early. All right, okay, one of the two. Come prepared, be prepared.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the things that we've seen very heavily in all of the ServiceNow messaging that's come out of late, so what are we, just to give a date stamp to this, Q3 2024, possibly the latter part of Q2, that ServiceNow isn't just about digital transformation. It is now the AI platform for business transformation. And there's a huge distinction there, right? I mean, I'm sure absolutely that was discussed to the nth degree in World Forum. What are your takeaways?
Well, so it was discussed absolutely a lot. In fact, it was really introduced by an advert with Idris Elba. Idris is the face of ServiceNow, and he was talking about business transformation. And funnily enough, in this advert, he said, "But I don't know anything about this. Luckily, there's a company called ServiceNow that does." But yeah, I mean, to pick up on obviously the distinction that you've just raised there, right? Business transformation versus digital. I mean, if you listen to Bill McDermott on the news, if you go and talk to a senior stakeholder in the ServiceNow team, it's about changing the way businesses work. They have moved beyond digital, which I think for many organizations is probably still to a degree thought of as IT.
Yeah.
And they're very keen to move beyond IT. It's about looking at the way everybody works within an organization, right? And changing the way people work wherever they are in that organization. And the AI piece, is obviously focused around generative AI and the take that they have around using Gen AI technologies. But what they're really looking at here is to say everybody in an organization, the interface that you have with your technology solutions is changing. The automation and efficiency, productivity gains are available from the ServiceNow platform. So I think that's the real sort of push that they have. Bill McDermott's and the team at ServiceNow are pretty good at understanding the way the market's going. So,
well, you could say they're driving the market, aren't they? They're really shaping how businesses will have to operate if they want to maintain that competitive edge. And it's interesting, right? Because they've gone beyond digital/IT, as perhaps was the kind of key focus point for a number of years now, to take it across the business. And it's very interesting, and this kind of ties into another point I like to talk about, is the introduction of RaptorDB, because you're going to have this huge wealth of data to operate from, not just in the IT/digital space, but across, finance, facilities, HR, every other aspect of your operation. So the introduction of RaptorDB to be able to basically maintain and perhaps, deliver beyond current performance, right? Did you get to listen in on any of the sessions there, or was that more of an ancillary aspect for your trip there, or were you having lunch at the time?
Yeah, no, I wasn't having lunch. They got it in early. I wouldn't pertain to really understand the technicalities of a database and how they work in practice. It was a bit of a footnote, I felt, RaptorDB. Maybe I didn't end up in the right sessions, and that probably as much by design as anything else. But I mean, I guess the reason for a new database technology is because as they accumulate data, as their messages around this transformational ability of GenAI, right, they have to be able to process that data in unbelievably quick timeframes. And so I think RaptorDB is sort of a foundational element. I don't believe it just gets rolled out to everybody. Okay. Certainly not now, right? But we will see how that progresses moving forward. But yeah, a bit of a footnote, I would say, RaptorDB, but an important one.
100%. I mean, I like the bit in the advert, and for those of you listening who haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch the sort of NowAssist collateral that ServiceNow have put out. But there's a great point in there where the one guy is talking about how quickly it returns results, and he's like, it's come back with X number of billion. It's like, that's billion with a B, just to be clear on the how rapidly you can access the data that your organization's creating. So one other area, and this has been a hot topic for a long while now, but it's really massive push in Xanadu, is the NowAssist with the GenAI functionality. I am sure, even though I wasn't there, but I could possibly hear some of the conversations happening that would have been centered around that topic. Yes. So I know you were there. What's the word on the street, so to speak?
Well, so there were two things that were flashed up, right, in the keynote, which I think are worth drawing out. One, it was a sort of portfolio map or vision, right, and GenAI or NowAssist sits in every single part of the ServiceNow platform solution. So they have gone all in, I guess, to use an American expression, right, on making sure that as part of Xanadu and as part of future releases, it is not heavily skewed towards one particular area versus another. So, to call some of these areas out, right? So in ITSM, obviously, and we talked about this, Dan, didn't we, around AI agents, Audrey, I think her name is, and the approvals around sending a customer a free modem. They gave a couple of other useful examples. One I thought was particularly interesting was around the creation of dashboards using NowAssist. So using natural language, basically, in performance and analytics, show me a chart with all of the incidents that have breached SLA in the last 3 months in Vancouver.
Right.
At the location as opposed to the release.
Not the release.
Yeah. Apologies. little in ServiceNow joke. But
that's Vancouver, British Columbia, not Vancouver, ServiceNow.
There we go. Right.
Yeah.
And that comes up with a chart, right? And you say yes, click yes, add to dashboard, and in it goes. And so actually, this is powerful, a very attainable type of thing, isn't it, for people that want to pull information out. In customer service management, obviously we had the AI agent side of things, again, a slightly different use case, but that was shown. There was some natural language interface for HR requests. They didn't actually show this in the keynote, but there was another session around app creator and again building apps, using some of the kind of natural language interface that that we've just been talking about in all of these other areas as well. So, they really, I would say they took quite a lot of time and effort to show some of the capabilities and to show how these capabilities are extensible across the organization, across all of these different areas. But I guess it sounds wonderful and amazing, and it is, but I think it's really important to understand some of the limitations.
I was going to say, it's all very well looking at these things and sort of saying, okay, right, I'm going to describe an app that I want to have for my business, for my area of the business, and so forth. And to be able to just do that, type in a prompt, and then within a matter of seconds or minutes, it comes back with something. That amazing, right? Really, really cool. But I think just to sort of preempt what I think you're going to say is that then how does a business kind of put controls around that? How do you have assurances that actually what has been developed at that point in time very quickly through the use of GenAI, how do we make sure that that's fit for purpose, not just now, or is it going to be a short-term thing? Have some guardrails in place, I guess, is what I'm saying, right?
Well, I think there's a few things there, Dan, but I'm just gonna, if it's okay, I'm just gonna wind it back a little bit, because I've been thinking quite a lot about how do our customers adopt these kind of technologies, and so to understand that, I think you have to understand exactly what it is that's on offer here. So I had a look at the ServiceNow website, okay, to try and understand a bit more about how they're using generative AI, or AI solutions, I should say, right, to support the direction that they're going in. And so I pulled off something that just sort of explained it in clear language that I could understand, and so that's a good thing. But they broke it down into 4 kind of areas, right? So natural language understanding, right? We talked about, show me a chart with incidents that have breached SLA, blah, 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 right? Okay. So being able to make sure that interface is using natural language. The second thing is LLMs, right? And what they say LLMs are used for is to recognize, okay? So understand, right? Summarize, right? So we have talked many times in the past, haven't we, Dan, about summary of incidents, for example. To translate, right? So multiple language support, okay? To respond to natural language input. So that's not just understanding, but that is then creating a task or an action, okay? And to predict. So natural language, understand, summarize, translate, predict, respond, okay? And then sentiment analysis to understand the sentiment, okay? And then the multiple language support, we've already talked about that sort of translation side of things. So, translation is language, but also translation is right to understand the intent. So it sort of links into the sentiment piece as well. So actually, if you look at that, right, what we're really talking about is and I don't want to underplay this, but it's kind of like a skin, right? It's not the workflow engine that sits underneath, right? It is a layer, an interface,
the user interface,
end user, right, is asking or requesting something to be done, and it is understanding that request and creating an appropriate trigger for something else in the ServiceNow platform.
So it's a bit like a supercharged Alexa, when you ask Alexa to do something, and it'll but a little bit beyond that, surely.
Let's not go down the rabbit hole of Alexa, but Alexa 8 years ago was amazing, and Alexa now is not amazing. Unfortunately, I think other technologies have overridden Alexa.
It's certainly not come along to the degree that we're seeing things like ServiceNow,
Exactly that. So, but anyway, so just going back to your question, right? So, how do businesses actually use this technology? So, I think, once you understand the limitations, right, what you sort of get a bit of a better handle on what it is you're asking the AI to do. And the key thing here is, right, that you need a business process in order for an interface to get something done. Yeah, I want a new mouse relies on a provisioning process for a new mouse to be sent to you. And if you don't have a process, right, that
can fulfill that,
right, then it doesn't matter what you're asking your GenAI engine at the front end to do, right? It's not going to be able to kick something off that doesn't exist, okay?
Or maybe it would get to the point where it says, right, I'm going to create a process that will fulfill this. Maybe that's going to be coming down the track, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure we're there yet. Because if you think about it, right, what you have in business processes is not one single track, right?
Sure.
You know, you look at, you know, even a fairly simple business process, right, kicks off other processes all over the place. So, you know, we're not at the point yet where I think that AI is defining business processes.
So just to take a step back there then, so what you're saying is that whilst there's this amazing new way for users to interact with the platform, they need to have those fundamental and foundational elements, you know, i.e. the processes in place, so that those can be taken advantage of by, you know, in effect, somebody saying, well, I need a new mouse, rather than filling in a form. They can do that conversationally with a virtual agent or a GenAI agent, and then that will then go off and surface the appropriate process. Those triggers take place behind the scenes, and within whatever time frame a new mouse is provisioned, or whatever the case may be.
Right. You know, Audrey can't approve a modem to be sent out if there isn't a process for sending modems out.
Precisely.
So that is one thing, right? Okay, that is a limiting factor, and you know, we'll come on to this in a little bit, but many organizations are not there on their maturity journey. The second is around data. So clearly the nirvana is that you have lots and lots and lots of business data, okay? And you're able to use that data to train the LLMs or, you know, the machine learning tools to understand how your business runs and operates.
So when you say data there, Sunil, what you really mean to say, I think, is good data or accurate data.
Well, now, I don't know, right? Maybe is the answer.
Okay.
But more importantly, is where is the data? If the data is in 500 silos, I'm not sure that data is accessible for training, right? In a very easy, concise way. If you have your data ideally structured, as you say, good data, right, in one location, and it's able to then go and learn. So if you've been running ServiceNow for 10 years and you've been processing a huge amount of business data through your system, brilliant, right? But if you haven't, and your data is spread across multiple silos across your organization, you've got a real challenge, I think.
There's an additional challenge there, something else to consider about how do you consolidate all of that to make best use of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, you know, so it sort of feels like, you know, you sort of see this kind of like fantastic vision, okay? But for many organizations, and I you know, refer back to the great conversation we had with Tim Mills of ITSM People, where you have to get your basics in place, lined up, before you
100%.
try and do anything more complex like this. And many organizations, and we experience that. We've been, you know, on customers where they've gone through a real maturity journey. Mark Toomey, our CEO, and Gary Overbury from MS Amlin are going to be talking about this at ITSMF in November. You know, MS Amlin went through this fantastic maturity journey over the course of 2.5, 3 years. They're still on it, but they've achieved so much. Other customers are much less mature, right? MS Amlin, therefore, have a better chance of adopting this technology successfully. Others run the risk, if they try too early, of failing and that having a significant negative impact on adoption. And if you take a simple example of a virtual agent, you know, a virtual agents have been out for ages. I mean, years and years and years.
Oh gosh, yeah. And who hasn't had an awful experience with one of those?
Right. Actually, and there are very few organizations that really genuinely, I mean, actually, well, I think we're lucky that we have one customer that has a very mature setup, and so therefore is able to use virtual agent, and actually very successfully, but many are not. And as a consequence, there is a real negative perception amongst the broad population that, virtual agents are, have not been a success. So I think there is a danger here, isn't there, of running too fast and getting a bad reputation.
Out before you can walk, right? So here's a question for the listeners, maybe. What other challenges do you see with the introduction of these very powerful tools now? We've talked about having the data in place, making sure that the workflows that underpin that interface are there. Would love to hear from the audience as to what other challenges you see.
Yeah,
drop a message.
That would be great. But what I can tell you from the customers that spoke at World Forum, so in the keynote there was Claire Lansley, who is the CIO of Aston Martin, the Formula One part of Aston Martin.
Very cool.
And she did a great presentation. She talked about the power of performance, right, and how on the racetrack 1/100th of a second could be the difference between a successful or an unsuccessful outcome, and so the tiny marginal gains that their organization can make contribute to that performance on the track. I love that message. I think it's fantastic, right? What was the use case that she talked about in terms of improvement of performance? JML.
Join, move, lever, yeah.
Joiners, move, levers, and more specifically, right? How quickly can they get somebody who's joined their organization up and running and operational? So I guess that is a great highlight, right? Of you've got this amazing technology capability that is still dealing with traditional business processes to try and find efficiencies and productivity gains.
And we have those conversations around JML kind of all of the time.
All the time.
With an accession here with all the people we speak with. It's great to hear that that's one area that they've been really honing in on, because I know for a lot of people, a lot of organizations, it's a real pain point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just that, to give you another couple of customers that I had talk. So it was the same talk, two customers. I think IT director, CIO, apologies, of Mia's group. So Mia's are a kind of maintenance business. I think they focus quite a lot on maybe social housing associations. Hopefully I've got that right. And another organization called WaveNet, who are a technology services provider who've grown very quickly. Mia's have had ServiceNow, I think, for about 8 years or something like that. And just starting to get into a position now where they're able to use some of the technologies around virtual agent. WaveNet implementing ServiceNow for the first time, just want to get the basics right. I want to get the platform in, get the basics right, and then really start to drive efficiencies through automation and that kind of thing. So I guess that just is another way of highlighting that the capability is there, but not all organizations are moving at the same speed, and getting a roadmap, not just for the vendor, but for the way in which your organization uses the technology in place is critical, right? Get these things and these ducks lined up, get things in the right.
Yeah, it's been said before, right? But it's a journey, not a destination with these things now. So ServiceNow perhaps more so than other platforms, but it's great to hear that, there's a recognition of that.
Yeah.
So just to draw a line under kind of those areas, Sunil, what were the ServiceNow kind of team that you engaged with? What were they talking about? What were they excited about?
Yeah, good question, right? So of course they were very buzzed up, right? But this is their big event of the year, so they should be. I mean, be worried if they weren't. They talked a lot about the opportunity, right? So we've been in sales a long time, Dan. For me, I read that as pipeline, right? So they see the pipeline opportunity for NowAssist, but they because the tangible thing that they go out there and sell, right, is ITSM Pro, or ITOM, or HRSD, or HRSD Pro, etc. Right? They're actually still very much focused on the SKUs that they're out there selling, and so they recognize, right, that if they've got a customer with ITSM and ITOM, that maybe the next big opportunity for them is actually HRSD. Yes, absolutely, they think that there is an opportunity for NowAssist and these sort of AI technologies, but they're not lost sight, I don't think, of that actually there are business functions that that they need to address before they sell AI as the sort of nirvana solution for everything.
Well, that all talks to the maturity journey, doesn't it? I'd imagine in their minds they'd like to get these organizations to that point where they are then you're robust enough to take that next step, let's call it that, and really maximize the value they can drive out of the GenAI and NowAssist functionality. But as we've spoken about, and you referenced Tim Mills, a conversation we had a few weeks back, you have to have the fundamental aspects. You have to have the baselines in place. Otherwise, you're going to try and run before you can walk, and it's not going to end well.
Yeah. And we don't like to plug Accession too much on the Accession podcast.
Well, Accession, you're talking about Accession now.
Yeah. But please do come and have a conversation with us if you'd like to explore how you can maybe improve your maturity and perhaps get to a position where you're adopting some of these technologies.
Fantastic.
One thing I would just like to say before we wrap up, Dan, was that as an organization, we now have access to a demo environment with NowAssist. So there are a bunch of our clever people who are.
Well, they've all got it up and running in their PDIs. That's what I heard.
There you go. Right. So they are all trying to see what we can do. Right. Trying to see what we can take to customers. So what I'd really like to do, something for you and me, Dan, to go and work on is getting somebody within the Accession organization to come in and tell us what they've achieved.
Yeah, would love to have a look under the hood at that in a bit more detail. So we'll certainly get one of the team on for a future episode.
Absolutely.
Okay, folks. Well, Sunil, thank you very much for sharing that overview of World Forum. To all our listeners, hope you found that was quite useful and interesting. If you were there as well, leave a comment, let us know your thoughts about World Forum. And until next time, thank you all.
Thank you. See you there next year, Dan.
Yes, indeed.